If he's genuinely missing you, he's not going to tell you directly. Let me hit you with something. Most relationship advice completely gets wrong. A man who truly misses you won't send you paragraphs about his feelings or confess how much he thinks about you. That's not how male psychology works when it comes to longing and desire. Instead, his brain operates on a completely different frequency, one that communicates through behavior, not words. And if you don't know how to read these signals, you'll miss the exact moments when you have the most power and influence in his emotional world. Here's the raw truth that nobody wants to admit. Most women waste precious time analyzing texts, waiting for declarations, and seeking obvious signs of affection while completely overlooking the three undeniable behavioral patterns that always, without exception, reveal when a man is secretly consumed with thoughts of you. These aren't subtle hints. They're predictable neurological responses triggered by genuine emotional investment. And once you understand these patterns, you'll never again question whether he's thinking about you or moving on. The problem isn't that men are mysterious or emotionally unavailable. The problem is that we've been taught to look for the wrong signals. We expect romance novel confessions when real masculine longing shows up as action, as behavioral shifts, as unconscious patterns he can't control even if he wants to. This video is going to decode those patterns completely, because when you recognize these three things, you move from confusion and anxiety to absolute clarity and confidence. You'll know exactly where you stand without having to ask a single question. So don't skip ahead, don't scroll away, because what you're about to learn will transform how you interpret male behavior forever. Let's break it down. Before we dive into the three specific behaviors, you need to understand the fundamental difference between how men and women process missing someone. This isn't about stereotypes or generalizations. This is about brain chemistry, evolutionary psychology, and behavioral patterns that show up consistently across cultures and contexts. When a woman misses someone, she often wants to talk about it, process the feelings, and seek connection through communication. Her brain craves verbal intimacy and emotional expression to manage the longing. But male psychology operates differently. When a man misses you, his brain doesn't immediately reach for words or emotional disclosure. Instead, it activates a completely different system. His prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and decision-making, starts working overtime. He begins problem solving around your absence. How can he see you? What reason does he have to reach out? What value can he bring to justify contact? This isn't emotional weakness or avoidance. It's how masculine energy naturally responds to desire combined with uncertainty. The neurochemistry behind this is fascinating. When a man experiences genuine longing, his dopamine system gets activated. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's about motivation and reward-seeking behavior. His brain literally starts strategizing how to close the gap between where he is and where you are. This creates observable behavioral patterns that are impossible to fake. You can't manufacture these responses through manipulation or game playing because they're rooted in authentic emotional investment. Another critical factor is the role of testosterone in emotional processing. Men with higher testosterone levels tend to express emotional states through action rather than verbalization. Missing you doesn't make him want to write poetry. It makes him want to do something. G about the feeling. Create an opportunity, make a move, solve the problem of your absence. When you understand this fundamental difference, the three behaviors we're about to explore will make perfect sense. They're not random. They're predictable outputs of a male brain genuinely affected by your absence. There's also an element of ego protection at play. Men are socialized to fear rejection and vulnerability around romantic feelings. Even when he's thinking about you constantly, admitting that directly feels risky. What if you don't feel the same way? What if you've moved on? What if he looks desperate or needy? These fears create a gap between what he feels internally and what he's willing to express verbally. That's why his behavior becomes the primary communication channel. It's safer, it's less vulnerable. And ironically, it's far more honest than words could ever be. The brain's attachment system also plays a crucial role in how missing someone manifests behaviorally. When emotional bonds form, the brain creates what neuroscientists call object permanence for that person. Even when you're not physically present, your psychological representation remains active in his mind. This mental representation triggers spontaneous thoughts throughout his day. He might be in a meeting and suddenly think of something you said. He might hear a song and immediately associate it with you. These involuntary mental intrusions are direct evidence that you've achieved significant neurological real estate in his brain. Finally, understand that missing someone creates a specific type of psychological tension. The brain doesn't like unresolved emotional states. When a man misses you, his unconscious mind starts working to resolve that tension through action. This manifests in patterns you can observe, measure, and interpret with accuracy. When you know what to look for, his behavior becomes a direct translation of his internal emotional reality. No guessing required, no confusion necessary, just clear, readable signals that tell you exactly what's happening in his heart and mind. The first thing that always happens when a man secretly misses you is this: he finds reasons to orbit your world without directly approaching you. This is one of the most consistent and revealing patterns in male behavior, and most women completely misinterpret it. They see it as disinterest or mixed signals when it's actually the exact opposite. It's his brain's way of staying connected to you while managing his vulnerability and maintaining some sense of control. What does orbiting look like? It shows up in multiple forms, and the specific behaviors depend on his personality and your connection. He might view your social media stories consistently, even if he doesn't always like or comment. He might engage with mutual friends more frequently, asking casual questions that give him information about your life. He might show up in spaces where he knows you'll be, creating accidental encounters that feel natural but are actually carefully orchestrated. This orbiting behavior is driven by a psychological phenomenon called proximity seeking. When someone occupies significant mental real estate, the brain creates motivation to reduce physical or social distance. For men, this often manifests as indirect connection rather than direct pursuit. Why? Because indirect contact feels lower risk. He gets the emotional reward of being near your world without exposing himself to potential rejection. It's a way of staying relevant in your sphere while testing the waters. Another aspect of this orbiting is information gathering. When a man misses you, he becomes genuinely curious about your current state. Are you happy? Are you seeing someone? Are you thriving or struggling? His brain wants data to inform his next move. This curiosity drives him to pay attention to details about your life that he wouldn't notice if you weren't occupying his thoughts. He remembers things you mentioned weeks ago. He notices changes in your routine or appearance. This heightened awareness is a direct result of emotional investment. The digital age has created new orbiting territories that reveal even more about his internal state. He might engage with content you share in ways that seem random but follow distinct patterns. Liking a photo from several days ago signals he was scrolling through your profile deliberately. Watching your stories within minutes of posting indicates he's checking your profile regularly, possibly even has notifications enabled. These digital breadcrumbs create a trail that maps directly to how much mental space you occupy. There's also a territorial aspect to orbiting that's rooted in evolutionary psychology. By maintaining presence in your awareness, he's subtly signaling to other potential competitors that he's still in the picture. It's an unconscious strategy to remain a viable option in your mind while preventing others from fully occupying the space he hopes to claim. This isn't about possessiveness in a toxic sense. It's about his brain working to protect a connection it values. The key distinction here is consistency. Random, occasional attention doesn't mean much. But when he's regularly showing up in your digital or physical spaces, when his presence becomes a pattern you can predict, that's when you know Missing you has become a constant state rather than a passing thought. His brain has created a habit loop around staying connected to your world, and habits form when something matters deeply. It's important to recognize that this orbiting isn't manipulation or game playing on his part. It's often completely unconscious. His rational mind might tell him to move on or create distance, but his emotional brain keeps pulling him back into your orbit. He can't help it. The longing overrides logic. When you see this pattern, understand that you're witnessing authentic emotional conflict. Part of him wants to protect himself from vulnerability, while another part can't stop gravitating towards you. Another reason men orbit is to keep the door open. Even if circumstances aren't right for direct connection, he doesn't want you to forget about him or move on completely. By maintaining presence in your awareness, he keeps himself as an option in your mind. This isn't about backup plans or disrespect, it's about hope. When a man hopes for a future possibility with you, he instinctively works to keep that possibility alive through subtle, consistent presence. What makes orbiting particularly revealing is that it requires effort. Viewing stories, showing up places, maintaining connections with mutual friends, all of this takes intention and energy. Men don't invest that energy in people who don't matter to them. If he's consistently in your peripheral vision, it's because his brain has decided you're worth the investment. The emotional return he gets from staying connected to your world outweighs the effort required to maintain that connection. The necessity of orbiting often correlates directly with the depth of his feelings. Casual interest produces casual, sporadic attention. Deep emotional investment produces consistent, patterned presence. When you map his orbiting behavior over time, you'll notice it either escalates, stays steady, or diminishes. Escalation indicates growing feelings and building courage. Steady orbiting suggests sustained interest, managing itself against fear or circumstance. Diminishing presence is the only pattern that suggests he's genuinely moving on. Finally, understand that orbiting often precedes direct action. It's the reconnaissance phase before he makes a real move. He's gathering courage, looking for the right moment, and ensuring the conditions are favorable before exposing himself to vulnerability. When you see this pattern intensifying, when the orbiting becomes more frequent or more obvious, it's often a signal that he's building towards something. The missing has reached a threshold where action becomes inevitable. And that brings us to the second behavior. The second thing that always happens is this: his communication pattern shifts in specific revealing ways. This isn't about frequency alone. It's about the nature, timing, and content of his messages that change when you genuinely occupy his thoughts. Most women focus on whether he texts or how often, missing the far more important indicators hidden in how and when he reaches out. When a man misses you, his messages tend to come during specific emotional windows. Late evening and early morning are prime times because these are moments when psychological defenses are lower. His rational mind, the part that tells him to play it cool or maintain distance, is less active. The emotional brain takes over, and suddenly reaching out feels necessary rather than optional. If you notice his texts consistently arrive during these vulnerable time windows, it's because the longing peaks when he's alone with his thoughts. Another revealing pattern is message content that references shared memories or inside jokes. When someone misses you, their brain constantly retrieves memories associated with you. It's called memory reconsolidation, and it happens automatically when emotional longing is present. By bringing up past experiences, he's unconsciously trying to recreate the emotional connection you shared. He wants to remind both you and himself of what made your dynamic special. These nostalgia-based messages are direct windows into his internal emotional state. You'll also notice questions that go beyond surface-level small talk. When a man truly misses you, he becomes genuinely curious about your inner world, not just your activities. He asks how you're feeling about things, what you're thinking about, what's been on your mind. This depth of inquiry reveals investment. People only seek to understand the emotional landscapes of those who matter to them. Surface conversations don't satisfy the brain when genuine longing is present. He needs deeper connection, and his questions reflect that need. There's also a pattern of unnecessary updates. He'll tell you about his day, share random thoughts, or send you things that reminded him of you, articles, songs, memes, even when there's no practical reason for the communication. This behavior stems from a desire for ongoing connection. His brain wants to keep the conversation thread alive because maintaining contact reduces the psychological tension of missing you. Each message is a small bridge across the gap of your absence. Pay attention to response time patterns as well. When a man is thinking about you constantly, his response times become either very fast or noticeably deliberate. Fast responses happen because he's already mentally engaged with thoughts of you, so replying feels natural and immediate. Deliberate delays happen when he's tries to manage vulnerability, crafting responses carefully because your opinion matters deeply. Either pattern indicates heightened emotional investment. Indifference shows up as inconsistent, random response patterns. The linguistic content of his messages also shifts in revealing ways. You'll notice an increase in personal pronouns like we and us, even when discussing hypothetical or future scenarios. This linguistic coupling reveals that his brain is processing you as part of his identity construct rather than as a separate entity. When someone's unconscious mind starts blending their narrative with yours through language, it indicates deep psychological integration. Another critical indicator is vulnerability creep. Over time, if he genuinely misses you, his messages will gradually become more personal and revealing. He'll share things he doesn't typically share: struggles, hopes, fears, uncertainties. This gradual opening up happens because missing someone creates emotional pressure. The brain wants to release that pressure through connection and disclosure. When you become the person he feels safe being real with, it's because you've achieved significant importance in his emotional hierarchy. The way he ends conversations also reveals his state. When someone hopes to extend connection, they avoid hard stops. You'll notice phrases like "talk soon," "let me know how that goes," or open-ended questions that invite continued dialogue. He's creating hooks for future conversation because his brain wants assurance that contact will continue. Definitive endings feel wrong when longing is present. The desire for ongoing connection overrides social scripts about proper conversation closure. Context sensitivity is another revealing factor. When a man misses you, he pays attention to what's happening in your life and tailors his communication accordingly. If you mention something important coming up, he'll follow up about it. If you shared a struggle, he'll check in later. This attentiveness requires mental energy and focus. It means you're occupying enough cognitive space that he's tracking the details of your life and feeling motivated to show up for you emotionally. The emotional tone of his messages shifts as well. When missing someone intensifies, communication often carries more warmth, more humor, or more vulnerability than standard friendly interaction. You'll sense a different quality in how he engages. There's more presence, more intention, more care woven into the words he chooses. This tonal shift happens because his emotional state bleeds into his expression, creating a signature feeling in your interactions. What's particularly powerful about communication pattern analysis is that it reveals consistency over time. A single text doesn't mean much, but when you map out his messaging behavior over weeks, patterns emerge that are impossible to fake. The timing, content, depth, and emotional tone create a signature that directly reflects his internal state. When that signature shows the markers we've discussed, you're not guessing about whether he misses you. You're reading objective behavioral data. Finally, understand that these communication shifts often happen unconsciously. He's not sitting down and strategically planning vulnerable late-night texts. His brain is simply responding to emotional need. The longing creates impulses, and those impulses translate into observable communication behaviors. When you recognize these patterns, you're seeing past his conscious self-presentation into the authentic emotional reality underneath. The third thing that always happens is this: he makes himself valuable in your life in tangible, action-oriented ways. This is perhaps the most definitive indicator of genuine missing because it requires real investment, not just emotional expression. When a man truly misses you, his masculine energy drives him to create reasons why you should keep him in your life. He wants to become functionally important, not just emotionally relevant. This value creation takes many forms depending on his skills, resources, and your needs. He might offer help with something you mentioned struggling with, fixing something, advice on a problem, connections to people in his network. He might go out of his way to make your life easier or better in some specific way. This isn't about grand gestures or trying to buy affection. It's about his brain's need to be useful and relevant to you. Men are wired to provide and solve problems. When you matter deeply, that instinct amplifies. The psychology behind this is rooted in evolutionary patterns. Masculine identity has historically been tied to utility and provision. A man feels most secure in a connection when he believes he adds value that's difficult to replace. When he misses you, his unconscious mind starts working to ensure you have reasons to keep him around. By making himself valuable, he's creating psychological insurance against loss. You're less likely to fully disconnect from someone who actively improves your life. Another dimension of this is attention to detail. When a man pays close attention to what you need, want, or struggle with, it indicates you're occupying significant mental space. His brain is actively processing information about you and looking for opportunities to apply that information through helpful action. This level of attentiveness doesn't happen casually. It requires genuine care and emotional investment. People don't track the details of your life looking for ways to contribute. You'll also notice proactive initiative. He doesn't wait to be asked for help. He sees opportunities and moves on them. This proactivity reveals his internal motivation to be present and relevant in your life. When someone misses you, waiting feels intolerable. Action feels necessary. By taking initiative, he's satisfying his own emotional need to feel connected and useful while simultaneously creating positive experiences that tie you closer to him. The consistency of this value creation is what separates genuine missing from occasional kindness. One helpful gesture might be politeness or convenience, but repeated, consistent efforts to make your life better through tangible action reveals a pattern of care that stems from deep emotional investment. His brain has prioritized your well-being and happiness as something worth investing energy into regularly. Another aspect is personal sacrifice. When a man rearranges his schedule, goes out of his way, or allocates resources to benefit you, it demonstrates that you rank high in his priority hierarchy. People protect their time and energy carefully. When someone willingly disrupts their routine or convenience for your benefit, they're revealing through action that you matter more than their comfort. This type of sacrifice is a direct translation of internal value. There's also a future orientation to this behavior. By making himself valuable, he's not just addressing present needs, he's investing in future connection. His brain is playing a longer game, ensuring that when you think about people who add positive value to your life, his name appears on that list. This strategic, often unconscious positioning reveals hope and desire for continued relationship. The emotional reward system also drives this pattern. When a man does something that benefits you and receives positive acknowledgement, his brain releases dopamine and oxytocin. These neurochemicals reinforce the behavior, creating a feedback loop. Helping you feels good, so he's motivated to do it more. This isn't manipulation. It's how human bonding works. When someone repeatedly seeks opportunities to generate positive emotional experiences with you, it's because those experiences are neurochemically rewarding for them, which only happens when genuine emotional attachment exists. What makes this particularly revealing is that value creation requires effort over time. It's easy to send a text. It's harder to consistently show up through action. When a man maintains this pattern despite busy schedules, other obligations, or even relationship ambiguity, you're witnessing behavior that can only be sustained by authentic emotional investment. The effort to benefit ratio only makes sense when someone genuinely cares. The specificity of his helpfulness also matters. Generic offers of help carry less weight than targeted assistance based on your specific situation. When a man remembers details about your challenges and shows up with solutions tailored to your exact needs, it proves he's not just going through motions. He's genuinely invested in understanding and improving your experience. This level of customization requires sustained attention and emotional energy. Finally, understand that masculine psychology often expresses love and longing through service and provision rather than verbal declaration. For many men, "I miss you" feels vulnerable and exposed. But "I noticed you needed this, so I handled it" feels safe while communicating the same underlying emotion. When you see consistent, thoughtful action aimed at improving your life, you're receiving his translation of missing you. The language is different, but the message is identical. As we bring this together, recognize that these three patterns, orbiting your world, shifting communication, and creating tangible value, aren't random behaviors. They're predictable neurological responses to genuine emotional longing. When all three patterns appear consistently, you're not dealing with mixed signals or confusion. You're witnessing a man whose brain has decided you matter deeply enough to warrant ongoing investment and attention. The power of understanding these behaviors is that it gives you clarity without requiring vulnerability. You don't have to ask where you stand. You don't have to fish for reassurance or decode ambiguous statements. His actions tell you everything you need to know. When these three things are present, he's missing you, thinking about you, and actively working to maintain connection with you. Here's what this means for you moving forward. Stop waiting for verbal confirmation of his feelings. Start paying attention to behavioral patterns. The truth isn't in what he says, it's in what he does consistently over time. When you shift your focus from words to actions, confusion dissolves. You gain the ability to read emotional reality accurately, which puts you in a position of power and confidence. Understanding these patterns also allows you to make better decisions. If these behaviors are present, you know genuine interest and investment exist. You can choose to engage or create space from an informed position. If these behaviors are absent, you have equally valuable information. You're not dealing with a man who's secretly missing you. You're dealing with someone whose brain hasn't prioritized you. And that clarity allows you to redirect your energy toward people who actually value your presence. There's also immense freedom in this knowledge. When you understand what genuine missing looks like behaviorally, you stop overanalyze it. Knowing every small interaction, you stop creating narratives around single texts or isolated moments. Instead, you step back and observe patterns over time. This broader perspective protects you from emotional whiplash and helps you stay grounded in reality rather than fantasy. The most magnetic thing you can do with this knowledge is remain grounded in your own worth, regardless of what his behavior reveals. Whether he's exhibiting all three patterns or none of them, your value doesn't change. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're evaluating whether someone's behavioral investment matches your standards and desires. This shift in perspective transforms the entire dynamic from anxiety and hope into assessment and choice. Remember that these patterns intensify over time when feelings deepen. A man who genuinely misses you won't fade away. The orbiting becomes more obvious, The communication becomes more vulnerable. The value creation becomes more consistent. Real emotional investment reveals itself through escalating behavioral evidence, not through staying stagnant or diminishing. Another critical insight is that you can't force these patterns into existence. You can't manipulate a man into missing you through games or strategic unavailability. These behaviors emerge organically when authentic emotional attachment exists. Trying to manufacture them through tactics will only create temporary reactions, not sustainable patterns. Focus instead on being your most authentic magnetic self and letting genuine connections reveal themselves through behavior. Finally, trust what you observe over what you hope. Hope can blind you to reality. Observation gives you truth. When you combine understanding of male psychology with honest assessment of actual behavior patterns, you gain a superpower that transforms your entire relationship experience. You stop wasting time on people who aren't genuinely invested. You recognize and appreciate those who are. And you move through the world with the confidence that comes from knowing exactly how to read the signals that matter most. Thank you for investing your time in understanding the real psychology behind male behavior. If this resonated with you and gave you the clarity you've been seeking, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss insights that transform how you navigate relationships. Remember, the answers you're looking for aren't hidden. They're written in his behavior every single